Right, on to our next speaker. Like I mentioned before, this afternoon is all about sharing that you can do anything with diabetes, and we've heard about a few of those stories already. And the next one is actually personally quite special for me because we've got a train driver living with type 1 diabetes. And for those of you who know me, know that I was told that I'm not allowed to be a train driver when I was diagnosed with diabetes, and probably you wouldn't see me on stage if I was a train driver. My life would have been very different. And the first time I met Alex, we actually spent so much time chatting, he actually missed his last train home. He wasn't driving that one. I am so super excited to have Alex come join us to share his story with us. Please do a massive round of applause. Alex Tilsley.
That is the only train I have ever missed. And it was thanks to that man there. And I didn't even miss it. It wasn't even close. It was missed by a country mile. So yeah, thank you everyone for having me here today. Thank you, Camille. Good afternoon. I'll just jump straight in. Believe it or not, I can't actually tell you my anniversary. It was November 2001. I was 10 years old. I was in hospital for 5 days, which in some ways I found a wonderful experience. Now bear with me. Yes, it turned my life upside down. I had my first horrific cannulas and I had to learn to inject myself. But the hospital had a Nintendo 64 and my dad bought me a CD player. I started on 2 injections a day, quickly moving to 4. Needles were 8 mil long and hurt quite a lot. I was back in hospital in 2005 for an operation, and during this week-long jolly, it was quite clear that my blood sugars were not well managed. But the hospital said they had an idea. In late 2005, I started on my first insulin pump, the Animas IR1200. It feels so cliche to say, but the pump is a life-changing piece of kit. Phenomenal, and it improved my HbA1c overnight. It still wasn't very good, but it was an improvement. All my life, I wanted to be a commercial pilot. Inspired by yearly visits to my grandfather, who'd moved out to California in the late 80s. Flying halfway across the world in a time before 9/11, it was not uncommon for my parents to be able to get me a chance to see into the cockpit, and a pilot once gave me a chart from the flight we'd just taken. I was hooked. But at GCSE decision evening, I was stopped dead in my tracks when my teachers staged an intervention and collectively rammed home the news that diabetics couldn't be pilots. It just wasn't allowed. I was gutted, absolutely devastated. So I did what any self-respecting person does next. If you can't become a pilot, you study drama. Sure enough, I took it all the way to university and did a drama degree, but I'm less successful than the actors you've seen today. I wanted to go into television or radio presenting. This is the BBC World Service. It's okay, I've been told before, I have a face for radio. After university, I meandered about a bit, trying to work out what to do next. My dad, who spent his entire career on the railway, suggested I apply for some railway jobs until I figured out what I wanted to do in life. Well, there's a saying on the railway, if you survive the first 6 months, you never leave. And so it seems. But we'll come back to railways in a bit. At some point, I was upgraded from the Animas IR1200 to the Animas IR2020. The significant upgrade here, that was pitched to me as this is the upgrade, it had a screen with colours. I had the IR2020 for a few years before being moved on to the AccuCheck Insight. The next gear change in my diabetes management didn't come until 2020, when I was given a Freestyle Libre. At the time, I had no idea such technology existed. I felt like I'd been living under a rock. You could see your blood sugar in real time and with a graph. Wild. Armed with this information, I set about overhauling my diabetes. My nurse cautiously described my Libre monitoring as obsessive. This wasn't an insult, it was obsessive, but it was working. I can't tell you why, but around the end of the first lockdown, I decided to undertake a little self-punishment. I decided to look up diabetic pilots to just remind myself that no matter how much I tried to revolutionise my blood sugars, it was never going to be enough. But I was wrong. I came across Douglas Cairns' website and it blew my mind. Not only were there diabetic pilots, but they've been doing this since the late 2000s. an afternoon of research, and I'd found the Civil Aviation Authority's diabetes policy and a local flight school. Just 5 days later, I took my first flight on the 11th of July 2020 in PA-28 Golf Sierra November Uniform Zulu, affectionately known as SNUZ, or the Golden Eagle. The requirements for a diabetic to obtain their medical are rigorous, and there's strict in-flight testing protocol. But ultimately, if you can meet the criteria, then the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning. In really simple terms, your HbA1c must be lower than 8.5 or 69, your control must be good, and this must be supported by reports from your hospital team. You need to provide retinopathy results and full blood results. When you're flying, you must check your blood sugar at least 2 hours before taking control of an aircraft. Within 30 minutes of taking off, so if you're stuck on the ground and you're going to exceed that, you test again. Every 1 hour within the air, and within 30 minutes of landing. So if you get stuck in a holding pattern and you're likely to exceed that 30 minutes, you test again. There are guidelines on what your sugars must be between and what, if any, remedial action you must take. Your testing must be undertaken on a blood kit that can be downloaded and sent to the CAA every year for review against your logbook. You send your reports away to be reviewed, and then you get invited to a meeting with their Professor of Endocrinology, who is a charming and eccentric fellow called Professor Russell Jones. He's a hoot and very supportive. Prior to this appointment with the professor, you can still commence your training. You just can't complete your first solo. This is a milestone in any aviator's career. Whilst still under the call sign student, you get to do 1 lap of your airfield and land again. This is the first time you'll have flown an aircraft on your own, and it is a very special moment. April 2022, my instructor Laura and I took toes for a spin to practice those all-important landings before we pulled off onto the nearest taxiway, and she made the fateful radio announcement, "Instructor leaving aircraft, student on first solo." You'll note that I dressed for the occasion in a pink and white striped shirt to match the aircraft. 89 training hours in the logbook, and in July 2022, I qualified as a private pilot. How on earth do I sum up my flying in just a few short minutes? It's the best thing ever. When I close the cabin door, I shut off the world around me. It's me, my cockpit, and whomever I have the pleasure of taking with me for the ride. It's my sanctuary. It's also the coolest damn thing you've ever done. Seeing the world from 2,000 feet is something else. From simple trips around the local area, to cruising along the Jurassic coast, flying around Needles Lighthouse, or taking in the 7 bridges in a golden January sunset. The stories and experiences are incredible. It's everything I've ever dreamed of. I've overflown Gatwick. I promise you it's Gatwick. No mean feat, as they don't allow you anywhere near their airfield, usually. I've flown a 1930s Stearman biplane and performed basic aerobatics in a World War II training aircraft. I've even been late for work a couple of times. First time because of a stronger than forecast headwind over Brecon, and the second time because I had to divert somewhere else because of a plane crash. In 2022, support for the AccuJet Insight was withdrawn, and I was required to choose a new pump. After watching a number of Diabetic's extremely helpful videos, yes, go on, yes, thank you. I chose the Omnipod Dash and began a chapter of pump therapy without wires. I love the system. I like that I could move the insertion sites more than I did with a tubed cannula, and to me it felt less obtrusive and immediately allowed me to better control my sugars whilst I was playing sport, which has been a lifelong passion of mine. With better control comes better performance and, overall, better enjoyment. In 2021, I applied to become a train driver and was offered a place on a training course starting in February 2022. This was the beginning of a roller coaster journey within the railway industry. Because in 2010, when the Equality Act changed, and in super simple terms, says that you can't blanket ban people with disabilities, the likes of the aviation industry began working with us to rewrite policies and enable us to fly. This hasn't happened in the railway industry, yet. Being Type 1 proved to be quite a problem. And this all stems from the specific wording in the master document that most train companies use to write their medical standards. Drivers must not be suffering from any medical conditions or taking any medication, drugs or substances which are likely to cause a sudden loss of consciousness, a reduction in attention or concentration, sudden incapacity, a loss of balance or coordination, or significant limitation of mobility. This is seen as a blanket precluder to type 1s, or anyone on insulin. At first it was surprise. This must be an error. You can't be serious. This became frustration. You can't be serious. Followed by going full John McEnroe. You cannot be serious. But everyone was serious. I won't be more specific about what shenanigans took place, but I think there are a lot of people out there in offices who don't understand what type 1s can do today, or just how well it can be managed with the technologies available to us. The railway is notoriously slow to change. There were some extremely tough moments, and a lot of times where I thought this wouldn't work out. The past 3 years have certainly changed me as a person. I've lost friends, and I've tested my relationship to its limits. I think some people genuinely thought I was the angriest man alive. A close friend said to me, 8 months into my struggle, a solution must be imminent. Plus, you can't give up now, because what happens to the next diabetic that tries? You wouldn't want them to have this issue, would you? He wasn't wrong, but little did either of us know that no easy solution was forthcoming. More perplexing was finding evidence of drivers at several companies who are type 1 diabetics. There aren't many, and those that are keep it very quiet. Those I spoke to all had the same story. They were diagnosed whilst in post and returned to driving by their local management, who didn't want to rock the boat. Staggering, confusing, and infuriating. During this time, I discovered the importance of the diabetes community. Initially, it was one person who got in touch with me. We'd speak on the phone, he'd pick me up, dust me off, and recharge my energy to keep pushing on and fight for what I believed in. I came to TAD last year, and my mind was blown. I had never been in a room with this many diabetics, and I sat there in quiet wonderment at all of it, at all of you. The passion, enthusiasm, and experiences that exist here, as they did last year, is something special. The gentle chorus of CGMs and pumps going off throughout the day, the sound of my people. After about a year of grappling with the industry, a company allowed me onto their training course. Fantastic. I was obviously nervous, because I knew this wasn't something that's necessarily widely supported across the industry. And I felt I always had to be perfect and couldn't afford a slip-up. My success or failure could affect type 1s in the future. So you start with 3 months in the training school, learning rules and regulations and spending time in the simulators. You complete basic technical training for the trains you'll drive, and then comes that first moment you move a train. 5 miles an hour along a siding on the depot. June 2023, I took another step closer to becoming a train driver. After this, I needed to accrue 225 hours of handling real trains with real passengers over the routes that I would be qualified to drive. A train driver cannot simply drive any train over any bit of track. You must know how your type of train works and the routes you will drive. But there were still conversations to be had about type 1 diabetes, largely because of the technologies we use to manage our bloods. No one was disputing my ability to manage my diabetes anymore. It was now a discussion, or a debate, about what could be used safely in the cab. The railway is extremely safety conscious and has often learned the hard way when it comes to improving safety. When it comes to electronic devices, there have been several prolific incidents in which misuse of mobile phones has been the primary cause. So naturally, when I present an insulin pump that can make noises and a CGM that is monitored through my phone, there was some alarm. There was a concern about fingerstick testing too, as it introduces sharps and bodily fluids to the cab environment. In the midst of this, I upgraded to Omnipod 5 and Dexcom G6 to go closed loop. Ever since I heard Omnipod 5 was going to be available in the UK, I have been begging my nurses to allow me to upgrade to it. The short answer is, I'm not eligible. Now, as you may have guessed, I like a good challenge. The workaround is that I self-fund Dexcom G6, and the hospital sorts the Omnipod 5. I've been closed looping since August last year, and it is excellent. I give it a good workout, but it's next level technology. Expensive when you self-fund an element of it, but the reduction in diabetes management workload is fantastic. Cliche, but like my first pump back in 2005, it's changed my life. After several discussions with work and an opportunity to demonstrate my technologies, I qualified as a train driver in August 2024, and after further deliberation, it was with enormous relief and delight that on the 10th of January this year, I worked my first train solo as a qualified train driver. I loved every single second of it. I had done it the hard way. I had done it the long way. But I had done it. It's the same joy as flying. Plying the iron road at all times of day, all seasons, all weathers. There's nothing quite like racing through fields that have a low mist hanging over them, a vivid pink sky above you, and the silhouette of deer as you disturb the peace of the morning. Or setting up a train at Paddington, ready to work a busy peak time service out of London, taking home up to 1,000 people. The requirements for managing my blood are much simpler driving trains, as there's no central policy. I have to keep my blood above 4 and carry fast-acting sugar, so no different to any other day. I carry my usual spare bag that I take everywhere, and I always have a tuck shop of snacks and sugars for every eventuality. And this is where the biggest challenge lies: shifts. Quick fast show of hands, who here works shifts and has diabetes? Okay, there are a few of you, and you have my sympathies. This is a challenge for people without type 1, let alone those of us that are also covering for our pancreases. As a train driver, none of my start times are ever the same. For me, I find lates are the simplest. I can have a nice lie-in, a lazy start, strolling to work after lunch. I finish some time after midnight, and my blood generally is pretty steady, pretty flat, and all is well. Earlies are the menace. Shifts begin between 2 and 4 in the morning, and I have learned I suffer quite dramatically from the dawn phenomenon. My insulin to carb ratio is double what it is for the rest of the day, and I still find I spike, largely due to not being able to pre-bolus far enough in advance, before crashing with enthusiasm throughout the rest of the morning. This requires close monitoring and a fistful of snacks, but who doesn't love a good snack? I don't consider it to be dangerous because I know it's going to happen, so I'm prepared for it, but it is one more thing to think about early in the morning. And this is where there's a bit of a challenge with closed-loop therapy. The system is great, but it's not infallible. It'll shut off the taps and do what it can, but ultimately, my bloods just work differently on earlies. But life is good, and I am happier than I've ever been. The weight of the world has been lifted from my shoulders, and I've often heard it said that find a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I'm there right now. And that is diabetes at speed. If you like pretty pictures and would like to see more of my madcap adventures, then I post infrequently on Instagram. I'm not here to sell you anything other than a dream. Type 1 diabetics can do anything, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The fight can be hard, the fight can be absolutely wretched, but if we stick together and support each other, we can change things for the better. My pledge to you is that I will keep fighting every day to change my industry so that no one ever has to go through what I did. Finally, as Henry Ford said, when everything seems to be going against you, remember, the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. Thank you.